Okay, so I bought this handy little flower stitch tool that I'd seen online. I was quite excited about it. The item arrived and I read the instructions. I got very confused because the instructions have been translated from Chinese into English and they weren't particularly clear. And I had one of the biggest problems I had was getting it to actually centre. So for those of you that have seen this online, you're supposed to be able to get sort of fantastic little concentric flower designs from it. Couldn't for the life of me get them. So I had to spend quite a lot of time fiddling around with it and trying to figure out how to use it. So to start with, one of the first things I did was make a stitch inventory, just using it on its basic setting. Okay, so that's it there on its basic setting, and I just used the various stitches on my sewing machine, just trying each one out as I went round, just literally having a go and seeing which ones worked. Okay, and then I had a go at actually using the item and seeing if I could make the little concentric flowers. And as you can see, what I've got here is a lot of stuff where it didn't actually really quite work, and I couldn't work out why. Seemed to be, as far as I was aware, following the instructions, but nothing was working. So anyway, this is how I solved the problem, and this is what I did in order to get them to actually sit neatly and nest neatly one inside the other. So first of all, looking at the flower stitch tool itself, it's got this long arm here and this little groove section here, which are used to put it onto your sewing machine. So you need to take off your regular presser foot, and that long arm will sit above that needle where the needle holder is on your machine, and then the little groove here, okay, basically clamps around, excuse me for a moment, clamps around your arm here and into that section. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do, is actually get the stitch tool on. Okay, so here we go. Just going to put this on. Right, get my needle out of the way. All right, this little arm is going to go above this. Okay, it's a bit of a fiddle to get on. Keep your arm above that. Okay, so that's it, it's above that. Okay, I've got my little screw. I'm going to take my screw. Line it up. In it goes. Okay. So the arm sits above the needle holder, and your little screw is around where the pole for your presser foot. Okay. Over here, this one here, is what allows you to make the circles larger and smaller. So to the minus, smaller, middle, medium size, that one the largest size. Okay, and it's just lefty loosey, righty tighty on that. All right. Okay, for this your feed dog needs to be down. Okay, so I'll take my feed dog down. Okay, so I've now taken the feed dog down and I've got my little presser foot, my little flower stitch foot on. Now, lots of people online have recommended when you use this that you need to put a stabilizer on the back of the fabric. Certainly does make a difference. Okay, the other thing is use small sections of fabric, because this actually rotates, and if you've got a large piece of fabric, what happens is it begins to twist and key, which actually isn't very useful. Okay, because it gets all bunched up and scrunched up and you don't get the effect that you want. So I am going to use some felt, and I am just going to put some stabiliser on the back of it. Now at the moment I don't have any stabiliser, and I've been using layout paper, which has worked perfectly well for these test pieces. But of course, if you were doing something a little bit more elaborate and you were actually not just testing things, you would want to use a proper stabiliser. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to start with just zigzag, and the only reason I'm using zigzag is because really what I want to show you is how you centre this. Okay, so I'm going to get my, just taking my foot down, okay, and I'm just going to do a couple just manually, just to get myself started. Take those threads off so they don't get caught all over the show. And off we go, and what you'll notice is this starts to go around in little circles, okay? Back round to the beginning. Okay, so now I've done a complete revolution. I've gone back round to the beginning. Now, this is the part that they seem to miss in the instructions and on some of the tutorials. Okay. You're not going to raise your presser foot. Okay, don't raise it. And do this and actually slide it, fabric and all, over by one. Do it back up again. Okay. And repeat the process, all right, just making those little first few stitches just to get us nice, and off we go again. Done 2 revolutions there, just because I wanted to get the stitch a bit thicker. Okay, take it up, lefty loosey, righty tighty, slide it over to the 3rd one. Okay, I'm just doing this by hand. Not fantastic, not bad, but they are at least centered. Okay, it does take a little bit of practice to try it and keep going. So you can see that the 2nd and the 3rd ring are quite close together on this one, but you get the idea of that if you don't raise your presser foot and you just push that fabric along whilst you're going to the next setting on the foot, that you get concentric rings, right? So just try it again on try a different variety of stitches and see what happens. Let's stick with zigzag to start with. Let's see what happens. Just get rid of these threads. I should have done that. Naughty me. Naughty girl. Should have brought that one to the front as well. Didn't. One. Going to find a different stitch. I've just got undone the screw. I'm just going to shift it over by one. Okay, the whole thing without raising the pressure foot, fabric and all. Tighten it back up again. Actually done 2 revolutions on that because I was looking at stitch as I went along and thinking, oh, it looks a bit spindly. You can actually go around more than once, and it does build the stitch up and gives the stitch more definition. So it's up to you. Just eyeball it as you're working and just see what you think you might need. Okay, so now I'm going to find a different stitch and try again on the 3rd ring. It's back again. All right, chosen my next stitch. Loosen this off, shift this over, fabric and all, put it down. Okay, that's another revolution done. Let's see what we've got. Release the beast. Okay. So this time I've got that. Okay, and it is just a case of sit and experiment, sit and play, and see how to build up different stitches and what sort of patterns you can make. But as I say, the thing that I was really struggling with was getting it to centre. I'd seen people just moving it about and going, oh, just eyeball it and put it in there, and I was just making a mess, which maybe that's what you want. But if you actually want them centered, then obviously you're going to need to use the technique of loosening off that nut and just moving the whole thing, fabric and all, so that you keep them centered.